Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Today we're going to paint these bright, fun, simple to do little greeting cards. You can put them on the front of a note card. I just used some pre-made note cards that I got at Michael's during their lowest price of the season sale, and it was $5 for 80 cards. We're going to use this brand new type of paper. It's called Shizen. It is a 100% cotton handmade paper from India. It has a very rough texture, which is fun to work with, and we're going to let the paper and the paints do all the work here today. So I took a piece of the 5x7 paper and folded it in half. I used my bone folder, made a nice sharp crease, and then I tore it in half, and I wanted to keep the edge really rough and natural and organic looking, so I just kind of used my fingers and pulled it apart and let those fibers kind of come apart and give you that nice rough, natural, organic looking edge. And we're going to make sure that we use that organic rough edge will be towards the outside of the card. The smooth cut edge will be towards the inside folded edge of the card. Alright, so I just lined them up, and the reason that we've got two of them is because this paper is 100% cotton. It's very thirsty and it takes a long time to dry. So we're going to work on both of our cards next to each other, and you'll have two done when you're all finished here. So I used my number 10 Mimic Squirrel, and it holds a lot of water. I just made a circle that was a little bit of a lumpy circle. We don't want a perfectly smooth circle, but maybe you do. Then you can just trace the bottom of a spool of thread or bottom of a glass or something and get yourself a perfect circle. But I wanted it to be a little bit wavy and have that kind of flowery shaped edge. So I filled it up with plenty of water and let that soak in for just a second for the water to stabilize, and then I mixed up my carmine paint, which is this really bright red, and I mixed it up so there's lots of pigment and a nice big puddle of paint. And I loaded that onto my brush, and I just ran that really bright paint along the edge of my wet circle and let the paint soak into the center part of my flower shape. And you can see how when you touch that paint onto that wet paper, it just kind of explodes into it. It's really satisfying to see it do that and let the pigment do its thing on this paper. And then I mixed up some cad yellow medium and ran a circle of that on the inside of my red paint, and I was once again used very heavy load of paint. My brush is really loaded up with that paint, so there's lots of paint to go around in that wet cotton circle. So, because that's wet and this paper does take a long time to dry, I lined up my next piece of paper here, and I did the same thing, loaded up my brush with some nice clean water, made an irregular, kind of an organic, rough, flowery shaped circle, and we're going to make two of them slightly diagonal from each other towards the center of the paper. And then on this one, I used the Opera Rose. I'm using a really nice set of watercolors that I got actually from Amazon. It's called Pretty Excellent. They are made by a company called Meiling, M-E-I-L-E-I-N-G, and I will have those listed down in the comment section below, so you can get yourself a set of those if you like. They are very heavily pigmented, and there's a 36 count set of half pans in this nice metal tin, and it's like $25 for the set. So you can just see where I'm showing you here, there's quite a bit of water on that paper, and I want that water to sit up on top of that paper for just a few seconds, and then we go back in with the color. And that way the water has a chance to soak into the paper somewhat, but you want to make sure that it has a nice sheen, and you can see that water sitting up on top of that paper. And then here's that Opera Rose, nice thick, heavy, juicy load of it on my brush, go around the edge of my wet, semi-irregular circle, and let the paint kind of soak in. And you can see, because this is such a heavily rough textured paper, that it soaks in and gives you this really great texture, and you can just watch the pigment kind of explode across the surface of this paper. And then I did the same yellow, cad yellow medium, a circle of that towards the inside, and I let the pigment sit and do its thing. I don't use a hair dryer on this because there is so much paint on top of the surface of this paper, and I don't want to blow it all over the place. I want the paint, the paper, the water all have a chance to kind of commingle and do its thing and give you those beautiful, soft, mixed gradients that everybody likes so much with the watercolors. Alright, so I clean out my brush, and then I'm going to use the sap green in this set and just draw a couple of stems, one for each of my flowers. I'm going to just draw it with the brush. I'm using the number 4 Misc Kolinsky for this, and I just want to barely touch the base of the flower with that green that's on my brush, and then draw it down. If I just touch the bottom of the flower, the yellow and the pigment from the flower will blend a little bit, and it makes it look really connected. Just take your time, draw a nice straight line. If that makes you feel uncomfortable, go ahead and you can draw it in. You can certainly draw on your flowers as well. You could use a ruler, lay a ruler down, and just draw your brush next to the ruler as well if you want to have it very precise and straight. But it's not a race. Take your time and enjoy the process of the painting and watching the color on the brush, and watch how it reacts to the paper. Your colors will start blending, and that's the fun part of this project. We're not worried about drawing the most botanically correct poppy. We're not worried about making everything perfect. We just want to get some fun color to play and react, and watch it kind of splush across the paper, and feel the satisfaction of getting that color on there and just watching it do its thing. So I drew with just the water again, kind of a teardrop shape. It's like the pods that the poppy blossoms have when they start out, and I just drew it with the water, and then with my brush again made a hook shape coming off the top of it for the stem. Took my time, lots of paint, and drew it right down to the bottom of the card so it's anchored and it doesn't look like it's floating in the air. Now we're going to paint the leaves, and I just took my number 4 Misc Kolinsky brush again, loaded it up with plenty of nice clean water, and drew some diamond shaped, very simple leaves like we used to draw in elementary school when we didn't worry about everything and we just did what we wanted, didn't make things be fun. So just draw yourself some diamond shapes coming off of your center stem. Lots of nice clean water. And I do a few at a time, 4 or 5 of them at a time with the water. And then I load up my brush with the sap green straight from the half pan. Tap it to the corner and watch it spread off onto that paper. I've got these little leaves that are coming off from the bottom of the lollipop shape of the poppy also, and those little applets are actually facing kind of downward because you do want to have a little bit of motion and take up some of that empty space as well. Just tap that in. Lightly spread it across that water and let it do its thing. Don't mess with it, don't sweat it. This whole time while we're putting in these leaves, those large poppy areas are drying on their own. That way we can get that nice blend that we want without worrying about pushing your paint around. Just let it do its thing. So I filled in as many leaves as I wanted on that first card, and then I moved over and worked on my second card. I just did it pretty much the same as the first. Once again, I'm not worrying about following a pattern or doing anything specifically the exact same, or make sure that everything is perfectly symmetrical. I'm just painting in that little poppy pod. The whole key with this project is to get your shape wet first with plenty of water, and then go back with a nice heavy juicy load of paint and just tap it around the edges. Get a little extra pigment down on the edges there. Don't worry about thinking that it maybe is going to be a bit heavy or a bit dark, because like all of your watercolors, this is definitely going to dry a lot lighter. All right, now we're to the part that makes a poppy. So whenever you see any type of a bright red or orange or yellow or even pink circle and you put a black center in it, boom, your brain turns it into a poppy. So I'm using black straight out of the pan here, so it's nice and dark. And I am loading up my number 2 Mimic Kolinsky here, and I am just tapping in the general shape of a circle. You can see that the poppy is still a little bit wet, so you're getting that nice kind of spreading little spidering out of some of the red, and I really wanted that. I didn't want it to look like a perfectly circle that looked like somebody drew in with a pen. I wanted it to bleed a little bit. So I did try and make sure that my paper was still a tiny bit wet. If it's not, you can always re-wet it a little bit and add a little bit more water, but I am just using black straight out of the pan. And then I tap some dots kind of around the center so it doesn't look like a perfectly smooth circle. Poppies have those little stamens and maybe a little bit of pollen on them. Oh, just like always, got to stick my hand in the wet paint. I did try and leave my center, the very center of my black, a little bit of a white highlight from my paper still. If it fills in, don't worry about it. If it doesn't fill in, don't worry about it. This is such a fun, stress-free project that you can do sitting out on the deck or in front of the TV in the evening. If you want to just make a card to brighten somebody's day. Now you do want this black to be pretty heavy load because you want it to be quite inky, but you could also use India ink for this instead of black paint. You could also wait till it dries completely and go back with an India ink or a micron pen and draw those centers in as well. All right, so we're all dry now, and we're gonna go in and get some of that gold Finetec paint on there. I activated my paint with a little spritz from my bottle, and this paint does use a lot of water to activate it. So get it in there and work it around and really activate the mica that they use for the pigment. I'm using the new gold color, which is a real bright yellowy gold, and I am loading up my number 4 brush, and I just do a swipe on top of each one of my leaves, and I did a little oval at the end of my poppy pod to kind of signify the bottom part where the flower is going to come out. And then I also loaded up my brush and went around the center with some little dots to highlight the very center, black center of my poppy as well. You could certainly splatter some gold if you wanted. You could splatter some red or green too. I'm going to be mounting these on some printed cards, so I didn't want to do the splatter because I thought it might actually get to be a little bit much. So just tap in some little dots with that gold around the center of your poppy, going right on top of that black. The gold is very pigmented with the mica that they use in these Finetec paints, and it will cover on top of that black absolutely no problem. I went back with my small brush and I just filled in a couple of areas with some extra leaves that I thought maybe needed it for balance, or to fill up an area that I thought looked a little bit empty. So like I said, this set of cards has 80 different cards to choose from, and I pulled out some colors that was a complement to the bright poppies, and I picked this pretty sunny yellow for the more orange yellow poppy, and I picked out that bright pink for the poppy that I had used the opera rose on. And I am just using some 3M double stick tape. You can get it anywhere. You can get it at an office supply store. I happen to be lucky enough that my husband works at 3M, so I have lots of tape everywhere at my disposal. I didn't do anything too fancy. I just ran a nice even strip of tape all around the edges of my painting. And of course my painting is dry at this point, so I didn't have to worry about turning it upside down and smudging. I lined it up so it was centered top to bottom, and I did put it closer to the spine, the fold of my card. I wanted to have the rough edge facing outwards so you could see that nice organic, almost ruffly edge of the cotton paper. I flipped it upside down, ran my bone folder on top of it, got it nice, made sure I had good contact. And these cards happen to come with envelopes as well. I just did the same thing with the other card and the other little painting. But these paintings are so sweet and so bright. You could do quite a few of them in different colors and put them in a collage frame. They would be adorable in a little girl's room or in a kitchen, any place where you just want a bright, sunny pop of color. You could do them in blues, purples, of course, oranges and reds, any color that you like. Poppies come in almost every color of the rainbow. Now you'll notice I opened up my card to make sure I was putting it on the correct way. I have been known to put them on upside down. And once you push down this tape really well, it is permanent. So there is not much repositioning that you can do. So just take a second and make sure that your painting is upright and the card is going to open correctly for you. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. You can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and Etsy under Stitchesbrew. Have a great day and enjoy.